Hello, Jonathan, and welcome to this interview with us. It's part of a series that we're doing around realizing our potential, and it was actually when I did a first interview with Michelle a few months ago that we came up with this title, because it seems to really represent what I like to do at RiverRhee, which is to work with individuals and with teams to help them realize their potential through coaching and training. So that's a little bit of background about myself. We're just going to have Michelle introduce herself, because Michelle is now my co-interviewer in this series, and then we'll come around to you.
Okay, of course.
Yeah, so thank you, Elisabeth. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. So I am head of blended learning for an edtech company in Cambridge, and I'm really interested in learning more about people's careers in the life sciences, how that is similar to my career, how it differs, and how different people are approaching their career. And what I'm particularly interested in is how people got to where they are, and the advice that they have to give people who may be looking to move away from that academic traditional route. And sometimes I think people are quite scared to move away, or they don't quite know what to do and where to go. And actually I feel like the steps are quite simple. It's just that people need that encouragement, or to hear from other people that it's possible to do those things. So yeah, I'm excited to hear your story, Jonathan.
Yeah, good, no problem.
So Jonathan, what would be really, really great would be if you just introduce yourself a little bit, say something about the theme that you'd like to explore today, and who you'd like to sort of particularly share this story with.
I'm managing director and site head of this site within Utrecht. It's a biopharmaceutical R&D site. So obviously I have the complexity of working in a foreign country as well. Although the Dutch are very Anglophile, they're very close to the Brits as well. But there are subtle differences. What do I want from this? I would like to just sort of talk about some of the things I've done in my career, and some of the things that have attracted me down certain routes, and also some of the challenges and things, particularly more recently, that I've had to face with regards to some of the things that I do here. Because the role here is absolutely fabulous. I love it, but it's incredibly challenging. And even though I'm 54 years old, I'm on probably one of the steepest learning curves of my life, to be honest, and that is just absolutely so rewarding.
Yeah, and being on a steep learning curve is also sort of fits into our theme about realizing our potential. So there are a few angles, it sounds like a few angles there that you'd like to explore, Jonathan, about your own career, and also about working with others and some of the challenges that you're encountering. Where would you like to begin?
Well, I'll just start off with my career. I mean, and it sort of fits in with the theme, really, because my career started very much as a technical individual. I started off working in a laboratory, and it was okay for a period of time. It was interesting, but then I got bored quite quickly, and then started to explore other options, and then retrained, did a degree in process engineering, went down the traditional route of doing an engineering role, and then started to manage some projects, and found out that actually what I really quite enjoyed doing was managing people, working with people very closely, motivating them, trying to get the best out of them. And it started small. It started off with, and I remember the guy was a guy that was based at a site I was working at in the northeast of England, and he'd been in that company for a long time, and he was looking for a fresh role. And initially was very nervous about working with me because I was relatively new and young as an engineer, but he worked alongside me, and we got on like a house on fire, and it really helped him develop himself into a different career path, because he wanted to get away from what he was doing originally. And I just thought that it was almost like, dare I say, it's like a drug for me. It was almost like a massive kick. I've really helped somebody here to move on in their career. And that's what, you know, so from that basis, I then went through my career really then focused really on people facing roles. And it started initially with, you know, leading teams, quite a tough one where I started actually to being a shift manager in a chemical manufacturing site, you know, working, you know, shifts with a team of people that were many years older than me, much more years of experience than me, and obviously quite dubious about my abilities to manage them. But again, managed to build a very strong bond with those people, and you know, we worked as a team and we got on really well. And it was difficult in some ways. That one of the first things I learned with that is that you have to retain some level of professional distance. If you get too close to these people, to anybody that's working for you, then you have this issue with, you know, what happens when you come to, you know, have to deal with disciplinary matters and things like that. And then I moved into more of a business development role, which was really about managing relationships and trying to persuade them that they, you know, they should work with the company I was representing in quite complex and, you know, expensive programs. And again, you know, really enjoyed that. And the kick I got from that was, you know, obviously not so much developing people, but, you know, getting people the best possible service for what they were looking for, and enabling them to develop their therapeutic platforms or molecules to go and treat people. And that was great, you know, and it was just, yeah. So I really have, you know, found myself very much in people facing roles and like being around people. You know, and curiously enough, you know, with this COVID situation, I just find it very difficult to work from home. You know, I have to be in amongst people all the time, really. But it's what makes me tick.
Yeah, some great things coming out there, Jonathan, and I'll come to you in a minute, Michelle, as well, to see if you've picked out a few things. But you know, the theme, obviously, of that great reward that you get from working with people. And how, you know, you mentioned trust a few times, and getting that balance between, you know, inspiring trust in them, but also not getting too close, because at the end of the day, as a manager or leader, sometimes you've got to make difficult decisions, and how that also carries through into your interaction with customers, inspiring trust with your customers. And I'm wondering whether also there's a sort of a balance between that trust and that distance, because sometimes you might have to make difficult decisions with your customers.
You do, yes. I mean, you're on. It's a knife edge you're on, because you're the internal advocate for the client in terms of the business, but then of course you've got to protect the business, and so if you swing either way, it can be quite difficult actually. You know, your allegiance lies obviously with the business you're representing, but on the same token, I just felt my professional reputation was at stake, because I wanted to make sure the customer got the best as well. Yeah.
So Michelle, did anything jump out from you from our conversation so far?
Yeah, it's really refreshing to hear, you know, your passion and the kind of the backstory behind how you came to manage people. I think that sometimes you end up with managers and you don't always understand how they came to be that manager, and hear about the kind of the frank story, let's say, behind that. And it's really fascinating. And yeah, and I echo what Elisabeth said, that I think the trust is really important, not just from you, but you know, when you're an employee, you want to know that your manager trusts you, and that you have that autonomy, and you have that autonomy to kind of shape your career, but you also know that you've got somebody behind you that has your back. I really believe strongly that having somebody who's really invested in you is so critical.
Yes, it is, and it's actually walking the talk as well. I hate to use that Americanism, but you know, it's about walking the talk as well. You know, you really have to demonstrate to people that you might say something, the words come out of your mouth. You know, we want to empower you to do something. We want to get the best out of you, but then actually you have to demonstrate that. And in my early career, when I was working for a company called VCA, which was originally ICI. They had this set of courses called TOWIE, and it was taking others with you, one, and taking others with you, two. And it was all about that. It was all about, you know, getting them to understand how people tick, you know, what drives certain individuals, and how you would embrace and engage them to take them on the journey with, you know, with a leader. And also, Michelle, the other thing which you know, I wanted to sort of take this discussion further. You tend to find that people are promoted into positions based on their technical expertise, without really taking much notice of the fact that they actually are, if they're leading people, that is a critical skill as well. You know, for example, the organisation that I've worked at in the past, and other organisations I've worked at, you know, quite often you find people that are in leadership positions and they're not performing very well, and largely it's because they haven't had the time invested in them to say, well, actually, this is some of the basic principles of leadership. Leadership has to be a key thing, you know, it has to be, you know, and they just don't people just don't see that necessarily, and don't necessarily invest in it properly.
Yeah, I feel your passion, Jonathan, that's coming through, and love this idea of TOWIE, taking time and taking time to bring people with you.
With you,
yeah. So so when you began, you know, there was sort of like 3 strands to what we might be exploring: your career, developing others, and challenges along the way. Where would you like to take us next in your reflections?
I think it's really around it's really sort of focusing on sort of organizational change and development, and you know, that approach of how you take other people with you, and you know, I mean, one particular challenge that I face at the moment is that I work for a very good organization. It's a great organization I work for, but it has been managed it manages a small business for many years, and of course the way that you manage a small business is very different to how you manage a scaled up business. You know, the level of complexity becomes a problem, and you know, if you're trying to manage an organization top down, the sort of the leadership team becomes the rate determining step, you know, becomes a bottleneck. And so you have to get to a situation where you are empowering people at the low level, but the medium and the low levels of the organization to deliver.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to explore really here, because you know, I started this journey with this company, which I say is a fabulous company with some great people, but they'd been used to being managed in a certain way, which was appropriate at that time. You know, one thing I always say, and I talk about, one of the pivotal things I came across in my life, which just the bell started ringing when I saw this, was a paper by a guy called Larry Greiner, and I think it was 1972, and it said it was Revolution and Evolution in Business: How Businesses Grow. It was recently reprinted in HBR, and it basically it says that organizations go through all these natural phases where they sort of go through a period of growth, and then they get to a crisis point, and then there's a reorganization, then they go through another period of growth, and they go through another crisis point. I think one of the things that happens is you tend to find that the management at that time fit for purpose for the organization at a certain point, you know, so very entrepreneurial, you know, there's little structure, and you know, people just get on with stuff, and very little, you know, leadership or control, because it's just like almost like a nucleus of people. And then I think you know, at a certain point when the company starts to get more serious and they've got products launched on the market, they've got to meet customer demands, they've got to meet timelines and whatever, you need to be in a different phase, and it needs really more sort of like more organization, more, you know, direct leadership, and you know, supporting the organization to deliver. And I think what happens is that some of the big pitfalls with some of the organizations that I've come across, they've left the previous management in for too long. You know, the previous management have lingered for far too long, and have held the business back. And that happened in a previous company I was in, you know, where the previous management were there for a long time, and the company was failing. You could see that, you could feel it. The company was just, the whole thing was starting to collapse. And the amazing thing is they brought in a new CEO, you know, and a new set of investors, And, you know, it was almost like flicking a switch, because this guy had a completely different outlook. You know, it was funny because when I joined here, the previous CEO actually decided for himself that was it. You know, he'd done what he could do. Right. It was time to hand over to somebody else, you know, and I said to him, I said, you know, that is fabulous. You know, you're the first person I've come across who's actually sort of sat down and thought, you know, where this organisation going to be? Am I the right person for the job? And it's not, you know, a personal sort of slight or anything. It's actually a recognition that, you know, the organisation is a living being, and that's what, you know, that's what happened here. You know, he moved aside, and then I came in, and then it was a case of, you know, really trying to, you know, install change into the team. Yeah. And the biggest challenge I had with that was, a lot of the people have been here for a long time. The core of the team have been here for a long time. And when I say, you know, you have permission to do, you know, I don't want to sign all these documents, you know, you have permission to approve this, or, you know, it's really pushing back on the top-down approach, you know, empowering people to do the job. People were just not receptive to that. And it was almost, you know, you give them permission to be empowered and to do their jobs, you know, and to develop in their jobs, and give them more responsibility around their roles. Some people just didn't want it. They just, it was almost like, you know, a rabbit in the headlights. You know, we can't do this, you know, I can sign this, I can approve it, really? You know, and I was stunned by that, absolutely stunned by it.
So it's wonderful, again, you know, a lovely story hearing about, you know, that your recognition that organizations change, they need different things at different time, they need different things in terms of their management. And, you know, the great opportunity that you've had to be able to help your organization evolve through a different management style. It's really, really good to hear. And what you said about, you know, the individuals having got used to a certain management style, and therefore difficult for them to make that change.
Yeah,
I absolutely recognize that. Again, Michelle, is there anything at this stage that you want to just sort of jump in with? Or
yeah, it's interesting. I have a question actually, and it's based a little bit on what you were saying about companies growing and then needing a management change. And I guess the same can be said about when you join as an individual an organization. I mean, you usually reach a point where it's time to move on for the next challenge. And do you have any advice on or comments on how do you acknowledge, or how do you determine when is the right time to move to that next position?
Well, you're asking somebody here who's moved quite a few times for that reason. And, you know, you get into this situation where you say to an organization, it's time for me to go, and they say, oh, I'll give you more money. And you say, well, actually, no, it's not about that. It's about, you know, it's about me and my development. And, you know, I suppose I've done that to other organizations. I've had it done to me, you know, here. You know, somebody came to me the other day, and you know, we've got some very good people here, and I try and retain them. The issue we've got in the Netherlands is that there is a booming biotech industry, and there's a lot of big organizations that are recruiting. So we tend to lose staff. And somebody came to me, you know, somebody I would say was a regrettable leaver came to me about 3 weeks ago, and she said, you know, I'm going to resign. I want to go into a different role. And she basically said, you know, I've thought this through. My career wants to go in this direction. You know, whilst I've learned a lot, you know, in the past 2 years here, I can see that, you know, in the long term, this is not where this company wants to be. The company you're managing wants to be. Therefore, you know, if I want to go my career that way, I have to take this decision to go elsewhere. And that's a simple fact, you know. This lady, and I said, hats off, you know, fine, that's brilliant, you know, because you are really just thinking about where you want to be, where you want to take your career, and you're making that decision on that basis. You're not just making a decision on the basis of more money or this or that or whatever, or better hours or whatever. You're actually taking this approach to develop your career. And the interesting thing with that is that, you know, I started my career, I'm trying to think now, sort of late 80s, early 90s. And my first actually my first placement when I was doing my degree was with a company called ICI, which I'm sure you know of. And it was bizarre with ICI because people, if you were recruited to ICI as a graduate, particularly as a chemical engineer, your career was then set. It was, you would go there, you go to the US to do this assignment, then you become a plant manager, then you could go into safety, and it was all mapped out for you. And that would never happened. You know, that was probably the last few years, you know, back into the late 80s, early 90s, that happened, because ICI then went down the pan. A lot of companies stopped doing that. And so the way I developed my career is actually thinking, well, you know, what do I want to do, and where do I need to fill in the gaps in my experience to get where I want to be? And, you know, so I purposely made a move from Zenica Life Science Molecules in Billingham at that time, where I was a process engineer, to go and work for an organisation in the northeast of England that was doing GMP manufacture of pharmaceuticals, because I wanted that GMP experience, and I realised I needed that experience to go further into the pharma industry. And the next job was, that's where I discovered that I like the management side of things. The next job was, you know, let's get into a hands-on management role. And so, you know, I think if you've got a vision of where you want to be, more than likely you won't get everything you need in terms of develop your career within one particular company. I just think you don't think, and also, you know, you need to expose yourself to different experiences and different views. Otherwise you become very insular and very tied into you know, it's almost like groupthink. You know, you're stuck in a certain rut.
So Jonathan, you're picking up the theme that was in the interview that we did with Michelle. So that's wonderful to hear. The other thing I just wanted to chip in was that we were talking about articles in Harvard Business Review. There was one very recently about encouraging people when they actually start in a company to have an open conversation about what they want to do in terms of their careers, and continuing that conversation through their time with the company, so that the manager can support them, provide opportunities if possible, but also so that there's no surprise if at some point the natural career development is to leave the company as well. So
that's very interesting. And
great theme.
This lady was, you know, one of the things she said was, I can't see where my career is going to go in the organisation anyway. Not the fact that not just the fact that you don't do the technical thing that I want to do. I can't see. And so I sat down with the HR director and I said, Jordan, you know, we need to think about this, because we take on quite a lot of young people. You know, we really need to think about how we, you know, when somebody joins the company, we can sort of show them that, you know, if you want to go down this route in your career, more of a sort of a people management side, that's how it could work out in the future here. Or if you want to become more of a technical expert, you know, you go that way. And, you know, we have live examples of people that have been within the organisation for 3-4 years that have gone down that route. So I think, and I think it's having that duty of care with people, because people, you know, particularly in this industry where people are very educated, you know, they really, you know, they've got a lot of ambition. They want to know what's in it for them. They want to know where they can end up, and, you know, what the opportunities are. And yes, you know, it's healthy for people after a certain period of time to go elsewhere. The problem is, if we don't actually invest in people that join, that are talented people, you will lose them, and you've lost the talent. And, you know, you're in a situation where you're having to recruit people to replace, which is costly. And you know, and if you've got talent in front of you, then try your best to keep hold of it.
Absolutely. So we've had a really good exploration, your career, challenges, some of the things in which, you know, you're helping other people develop. What have we missed, Jonathan, that you really wanted to be able to share today?
Well, there's another thing that I wanted to share as well, which is another thing that I find that in some organisations, people don't recognise that diversity amongst their employees is so important, you know. And, you know, it's not a case of you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. It's a case of, you know, having a balanced view. If you replicate, I mean, this is obvious really, but if you replicated, you know, several of me in this organisation, it would fall over straight away. You know, you have to have people alongside me who are okay, Jonathan, that's a great idea, but how are we going to make this work in practice? You know, that has to happen. And I sometimes find it frustrating that people start to call out other people because they're different to them and they don't necessarily, you know, fit in with their view of the world. But we should, you know, celebrate the diversity of people's views and, you know, people's backgrounds, because it adds up to what the company is.
Yeah, it's something I believe in passionately as well. Celebrating that diversity, recruiting for diversity, teaching people or helping people to value that within an organisation and how they can work with each other in that diverse way. Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm going to give Michelle a chance to jump in here with anything that might be coming to mind for you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you talk about diversity of people, and I think in particular skills is an interesting one, because you can learn so much from other people as well.
Yeah.
And when everybody has a very similar skill set, actually, you're right, the ideas are very similar, they're very modular, and having that diversity means that not only do ideas evolve into much bigger things, you also learn and you grow as well. And I think that's really important, and throughout your career, is that you're always learning. And Jonathan, you said right at the beginning of this that you're on a really steep learning curve, and I think that you should never stop learning, and that's not just from books or from the internet or whatever, that's also from the people you work with. You can, you know, soak up so much, and it's a bit of give and take as well, right? Because you can help other people grow as well as them helping you grow, and it's this mutually beneficial relationships that I think you know, make companies grow as well. Ultimately.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly that. You know,
we're coming to the end of the interview now. I think we've sort of explored lots of different themes. I have no idea whether, Jonathan, you would be able to sort of summarize in kind of three points that for you, you know, symbolize, represent the story that you've shared today. You know, what do you feel are like sort of the 1 to 3 most important takeaway messages?
yeah. I mean, I think that one of the first things I say to everybody is you create your own opportunities. So, you know, if there's an opportunity there that you want to take, then, you know, it's there for the grabbing. And there, but you know, if you really want it, you can get that opportunity. You can make it yours. So that's one of the first things. I think, you know, I think leadership, when people are in leadership roles, I think it's very much underestimated what is involved in being a leader of people. You know, science is complex enough, but, you know, managing people to get them to do science and to think innovatively is very, very difficult. And I think it's a skill that has to be honed, and you never stop learning. And I don't think you necessarily, you know, I think organisations in the technical arena really need to think very carefully about who they promote into leadership roles, rather than just promoting people who have, you know, technical prowess. They need to be, you know, thinking about their leadership skills. And the third one really is diversity. It's really about, you know, having a recognition that yes, people have different views to you, but that is healthy. And it should be celebrated and supportive. And, you know, we shouldn't be pointing fingers at other people and say, well, he's wrong and I'm right. It's a case of, you know, let's explore this together. Because I quite often see, you know, polarization between individuals that, when actual fact, they sometimes are violently agreeing, but it doesn't appear that way, you know.
Yes, violently agree.
So that's,
yes.
I mean, those are the take homes really for me. And you never stop learning. You never ever stop learning in your career. And if you do stop learning, then it's time to probably, you know, put your boots up and just you know, call it a day, because you know, there's so much to learn from, as you said, Michelle, from other people as well. I get a lot of my energy from other people and other people's ideas.
So thank you very much for your time today, Jonathan. Some really, really lovely messages that you've shared with us, and I'm looking forward to sharing those more widely.
Hey.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.